Welcome everybody to our Microsoft 365 webinar series. We've been doing this for over 4 years, and we're excited to have you here. As far as the structure, we tend to do about 30 minutes of content and then open it up for Q&A at the end. So as you're listening to the content, if you have questions, feel free to enter them into chat or save your questions for the end. But we try to go through the content first and then open it up then. I did want to tell you, some people wonder, why in the heck are we using Zoom for a Microsoft 365 webinar? And the reason for it, quite honestly, is we don't want a speed bump for people to attend the session. A lot of people attending the session are on Google, or they don't have Teams configured appropriately and they struggle with Teams meetings. So if that gives you an explanation. So if we figure if your grandma can log on to Zoom, it's probably a good platform for us to use in this particular setting. So today I'm so excited. We've been doing really a series on Copilot, and today we're going to be talking about how the heck do I actually use Copilot now that I've paid for the license. So I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. And then next month, we're going to go ahead and talk about Power Automate, and I'm going to enter a bunch of links into chat. If you're interested in the Power Automate topic in January, go ahead and register. The link is in the chat. Even if you can't attend or you don't know if you can attend, when you register, we'll send you a copy of the recording. So it's worth registering. There's a link in there for all of our past webinars, so you can check those out. A link to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that, sign up for our newsletter. And then there's a link to the case study I'm going to be covering today as well. And if you're interested, a copy to buy my book. So perfect. So I'm going to give a little backstory before opening kind of the reins. And today our speaker is Bruce Jacobson. I'm super excited. Bruce is one of our awesome CTC team members, and he'll give a little bio kind of background on himself when he starts talking. But we do these webinars really to help the business leaders understand that they're paying for software that can solve a lot of their business issues. And there's usually a list of issues that we're listening for when we're talking to clients, that we think, well, if we hear these words, then we know there's something in the Microsoft 365 suite they should be considering. So they tend to be around organization, communication, collaboration, all the words you see on the slide. Another thing we pay attention to is overflowing email inboxes or back-to-back meetings. The joke we always say is, when people aren't communicating effectively, they call a meeting. And so it's what tends to happen is when companies are running inefficiently, we sort of spot that as a root issue, and we can guide our clients on how to use Microsoft 365 to work smarter, basically. So go ahead, Bruce. You go, yep. So when the pandemic hit and a lot of companies were hybrid and remote, 365 became a really critical platform. A lot of companies are moving back to in the office, but there's still such a massive benefit to be using the 365 suite, even if you're fully in office, because inevitably you will have a parent that has a sick kid and they didn't plan to work from home and now they need to work from home. And so having that flexibility, not having to VPN to the technology, being able to access everything on your phone provides great flexibility for this kind of modern day workforce. I'm going to go through this case study, and again, there's a link in the chat if you want the details on it. But this is a recent client we worked with Eagle Retirements, or wealth management company. Doug's challenges is he really wanted to position for growth. He had big vision, big ideas, so he really wanted to be positioned for growth, and he wanted to fully leverage 365. He unfortunately had a failed rollout of Microsoft Dynamics using the CRM piece, and so he was struggling with that. And then in addition, he had a remote staff member that he couldn't quite figure out how to make them work productively, work in the fold with everybody else in the office. So those were his challenges to start. The solution is we decided to go forward with a retainer model with Doug. So sometimes if our clients ever want to scope a particular project, we definitely can scope it and deliver that. But a lot of times they have a bunch of things they want to work on. And so a retainer model just provides great flexibility. So we went down the retainer model with Doug. We definitely solved his dynamics issue, configuring things the correct way using the CRM. And we focused a lot on really helping them use Loop and Copilot. Those were some of the big areas we worked with Doug. For the CRM, the comment that Doug made, which just warmed my heart, is he said that our team answered the question he'd been waiting for like 6 months. We answered it within an hour. So having deep expertise in dynamic CRM. So that was great. We set up a number of customized workflows. So if you think about having kind of, let's say, gold, silver, bronze type clients and having different workflows for those different categories, we set up workflows for those different categories to work efficiently, set up automation for things like when a client passes, which is an important thing in a wealth management environment. And then set up much more streamlined data entry when they onboard new clients. So those were the key things we did for this in the CRM area. With Loop, we always joke and say Loop is OneNote on steroids. That's actually one of our team members made that up, and I'm like, that's brilliant. So it's about bringing in web parts. It's different than OneNote, but a really interesting, very flexible tool. And so we were able to integrate Loop into Dynamics to do in Planner and Teams, and sort of pull in the static information and from Loop into these many different areas. And now his remote team member is highly efficient because of Loop, because she has access to a lot of that information. And then with Copilot, which is perfect for our conversation today, we really taught him how to prompt for Copilot and create different scripts, populate data from client meetings. And then one of the big areas we worked on with him was helping him create white papers. So he was doing a lot of work creating white papers. We helped him use Copilot to do that, and really has cut his time in half. So he was super stoked to better understand how to leverage Copilot. Oh, go back to the last one. Yep, thanks. And then we always try, there's always accolades along the way, but we always try to calculate one hard ROI just to have a number. So first of all, just to know the total investment with him was just $14,000, not much money for all those great benefits. The great thing about using Microsoft 365 is you're not paying an ongoing subscription fee. So there's no ongoing cost. We build it, set it up for you, and then you own it. The hard calculation was that for client onboarding, which they do all the time, they went from 30 minutes to 30 seconds. So think about that as a savings. And then I loved his quote that he said, we went from being behind the competition to leapfrogging the competition because of everything that was done. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some inspiration to start thinking about what are some of the business issues or opportunities in our business. And hopefully we'll give you some ideas today on how Copilot can help you. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Well, thank you, Jan, and thank you everybody for attending today. We're going to talk a little bit about just kind of what AI is and set the context for Copilot for Microsoft 365, get into some of the advantages that this platform has, how to do some custom Copilots, and really how to bring all of this to reality within the organization. So once again, my name is Bruce Jacobson. I'm the Microsoft 365 and Azure practice lead, and have been doing all of these Microsoft tools for a long time.
A long time.
I actually started with SharePoint 2001 beta, the first version of SharePoint, and I kind of got roped into this stuff, and I'm still here. So it's been a fun ride. So obviously AI is a hot topic. It's like you just hear about it constantly. Anytime you see things on TV or in news articles, everybody's talking about AI. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. AI, I think, for business today is just kind of a co-worker, an assistant that just helps you do things. It kind of sits alongside of you and can help do things more efficiently than you otherwise could do alone. By the way, this book, Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, is a great book if somebody's interested in the whole topic of AI. And one of the things to also keep in mind is this stuff is so new that it's just amazing what it can do. And yet, in spite of that, this quote down here that a colleague of mine did, today's AI is the worst AI you will ever use.
Oh, that's so good, Bruce. It's so true.
It's just moving forward so rapidly. So if there are days where you might get frustrated with AI, just think about the fact that it's like, this is pretty amazing and only getting better. It's just starting. So this talk today is third in a series, as Jan mentioned. CTC did one right when Copilot was just getting launched, which oddly enough is just less than a year ago. So that's how new some of this stuff is. So if you're interested in some of the basics, make sure to go back and watch that. It's a great video. Another great video is Copilot for Microsoft 365, done in May. Talks a lot about what are some of the differences between the consumer and business side. And today we're going to kind of take the next step and talk about kind of opportunities within the organization and how you can achieve some of those opportunities and what's kind of a strategy to roll AI out and to roll Copilot out within your organization. So Copilot is one of the big advantages. I think there's two really, really big advantages with Copilot over just AI tools in general. One is the fact that Microsoft has embedded AI inside of every single Microsoft 365 tool. And that's awesome, right? Because it's just right there where you need it and when you need it. And there are lots of different things you can do within that context. I can go through all these, but recapping a meeting is just something that's like so standard now, and we just rely on it so much. It's just totally awesome. I think number four, summarizing a document. I personally use this one all the time. I come up with some big document, I need to send it to somebody. I'll just ask Copilot for a summary of the document, and I'll put that in the email when I send off that document. 6 and 7, in the context of getting ideas and helping me produce a document. I can't tell you the number of times that I've used Copilot to help me create a PowerPoint slide deck on some certain topic. And I don't know what I would do without it now. It just cuts so much time off of that kind of laborious task, right? Of creating a PowerPoint slide deck and coming up with images. And it's not that I don't have to go in and edit it sometimes, but just the fact that it's right there and can give me a draft in just seconds is pretty amazing. So lots of opportunities when Copilot is inside of all of these applications. I think the second big advantage is the fact that Copilot relies on the whole Microsoft 365 infrastructure. And so the back end of Microsoft 365, where all the data is accessible, is something called Microsoft Graph. And Microsoft purposely built 365 to be like that so that all of us could do custom development, but additionally so that all of these apps could talk to each other. And so Graph was a huge foresight on their part to be able to have access to all of that data. Further, Microsoft created something called the semantic engine. And I remember talking about how old I am. I remember back in 2009, I went to a SharePoint conference, and Microsoft had just purchased 3 search engines in addition to everything that they were currently doing. One of those rolled into Bing, and the other 2 rolled into Microsoft 365, which wasn't even called that at the time. And I remember talking to all of these Microsoft geeks who were working on all this stuff, and it wasn't as much about creating a better search as it was really about creating links between all of the information and really building that context. So the semantic engine is really all about connecting all of this stuff on the backside together. It's like I use certain documents and I'm part of certain teams, and my teammates use certain documents. And how does all of this stuff tie together? Well, it definitely ties together from a search result perspective in that it gives me better, more pertinent search results, but it also ties together hugely from a Copilot perspective. And that's just a big advantage that Microsoft has with Copilot. So it's all of this data. The semantic engine sits on top of Graph and accesses all of that data. It puts it all together, creates these indexes of key phrases and documents and all the people involved. It not only enhances that search, but is really now fundamental and very foundational to Copilot for 365. And looking through literally billions and billions of connections there within an organization. And, that's just something that is just native in Microsoft 365, and they've just totally leveraged it from a Copilot perspective. So what that means is, and this slide is a bit messy, but I still love it. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you've got all of these apps, right? So here's Bruce. He's in PowerPoint. He wants to create a slide deck. He makes that request. It goes to Copilot. Copilot first checks with Microsoft Graph, the semantic engine, all the permissions that are in play. It does something we call grounding. It makes that request. It eliminates nonsensical types of information. It passes that off to the large language model, ChatGPT, and it does that processing. It comes back, grounds again in post processing, and then returns that result to me as the user. And this is just so elegant and at the same time so secure. And Microsoft had a huge advantage that they had the foresight to have this whole platform developed way in advance of Copilot, and that they can continue to really leverage this in the context of Copilot and AI. So that kind of leads to another question. It's like, well, what if I want to use Copilot to do things other than Word or Teams or PowerPoint? Well, there's lots of opportunities to do that. So in Copilot, we can buy Microsoft 365 Copilot and use that with all of the apps. But we can additionally say, well, hang on a second. I want to use this with some of my other data, with some of my other apps, some of the other things that I do. And the first thing to do on that is probably Copilot Studio, because you can just do so much with this application that's provided to you as part of your tenant and as part of the Copilot licensing. Should you want to take it even further, you can literally, in the Microsoft stack, build any kind of custom application from an AI perspective, any kind of custom Copilot that you might want to do. And so Azure has a whole platform to really extend that out. And sometimes, in all honesty, we're mix and matching these things as well. From a Copilot Studio, I just want to, this is a simplified version of that messy slide that I showed earlier, but that illustrates the point that there's all of these other systems, right? It's not just Microsoft 365, it's everything else. So if you see on the bottom there, it says systems of record. We've got CRM systems for sales and marketing and all the relationship management stuff that we do. ERP systems for manufacturing or for finance, all of the HR stuff. The list can go on and on and on, right? And Microsoft has, I need to update this slide. It says 1,200 connectors. Actually, it went to 1,400 in May, and I think this is close to 2,000 now. Direct connectors into other systems. Pretty much, Microsoft's such a huge platform, the 365 platform, that any manufacturer that's making a system out there wants to be part of that and are building things to make it easier to become part of Copilot extensions. And so there's lots of different ways to do this. By the way, we can also build our own connectors if there isn't a pre-built connector for a particular application. But as what this does then is it really incorporates all of that data into the query as well. And it helps to train the models based on that information as well. So it's really just extending out that whole Copilot for Microsoft 365 into everything that we might be doing within the organization.
Cool.
So all of this stuff is cool. Now, how do I bring it to reality? Right? That's one of the big challenges. And really, there's I think this is not this big of a deal, but I tell you something, we hear a lot from people that approach us and say, I really kind of think we should be doing this Copilot thing and getting involved with AI. And we bought a bunch of licenses and we gave it to some people, and it's kind of gone nowhere.
Mhm.
It's like, well, that's because you weren't very purposeful in doing that, right? And so there is a method to rolling this out. I think this is something that all of you can do. Fundamentally, it involves making sure that you've got some clear leadership direction and somebody driving this whole thing forward, recognizing the opportunity. And then it really comes down to, I think, two different sides to making this successful. One is the human side, and one is the technical side. And it's really that leadership kind of overall driving this, and then having the user side and supporting your users, and the technical side, having those two working in tandem and kind of marching forward to really make this a reality. So who do you get involved when you're getting started with this? Well, obviously you need an executive sponsor or two. You need somebody to be in charge of this particular project to march it forward, a success owner. You need to identify who are some of the really early adopters that I could really tap into. And then how can I roll that out to a broader, but still relatively small group of champions, where we could kind of help to spread this word and really set direction on this. And then obviously the technical team on the backside. And so this really, I think, rolls out in phases, right? You get a small leadership group together. You say, what the heck is this stuff, right? Let's use this a little bit. Let's find out what this is. We hear about this all the time. We know our competitors are doing this. What should we be doing with it, right? What are some of our goals here? How are we going to take care of security? What's the game plan there? Do we got to develop some kind of a plan? And then we just kind of march it forward, right? We take a small group, do a proof of concept, gain some experience. We set up an AI council, a small group that can really help to continue to set direction and tweak this journey that we're on. We identify some champions, a little bit larger group that can help to spread the gospel here and we can get feedback from. We say, what do we want from this, right? What are the things that define success for us? And then we take a look at what are some of the technical sides. Fortunately, once again, as part of the Microsoft platform, you have all kinds of tools there that are just baked into your tenant, into the Microsoft 365 platform. So there's already an optimization assessment out there that you can go through. It's free. It's for you. Takes about a half hour to go through. So it's very reasonable to do. You can do this up front. It'll help you address some of those security concerns that you might have, help to set some governance, help to come up with an implementation plan so that when you move on to the next phase, what I call kind of a pilot, an onboard and engage, then you can take this out to kind of the next set of users, kind of really get your champions, your core group involved. You can figure out, how am I going to do training for these folks? How do I modify that training to take it to the next level? How am I going to get feedback so I know what these people are struggling with and where the opportunities that they've realized, what are those? And I can share some of that information. What are some of the security controls that I put in place? How am I gonna roll Copilot out to these users, right? How do I get them the license and get them the information, get them some support materials? How do I deal with permissions? How do I take a look at the usage that's going on? It's kind of this opportunity to really get started with this, right? In a real true pilot opportunity. I think part of the whole security thing is once again, Copilot for Microsoft 365 is based on Microsoft 365 and lays right on top of all of that structure. And so the advantage that you've got there is the fact that all of this is built in. You can continue to move this forward if you identify other needs, right? Data loss prevention is something relating to the inadvertent dissemination of information, for example. I don't want anybody to get information if it has social security numbers or credit card information, some of those kinds of things. Once again, Copilot just lays on top of all this stuff so you can continue to take advantage of the entire tool set. There's lots and lots of learning. I think one of the things you need to do is look through the learning because there's too much of it and say, hey, users, I'm going to direct you to some specific things because I want you to be conscious of these things in particular. And then the next wave, delivering impact, once again, rolling it out to subsequent waves of users, right? That could be by department, could be by particular roles or user types. But once again, continuing to get feedback, continuing to get success stories, really taking a look from a technology standpoint at, well, what's going on? And Microsoft's got something that's just invaluable that once again is just included with your licensing called the Copilot dashboard. Are you ready for all of this stuff? You can continue to use this to make sure that you've done all the steps. Is this being adopted? What kind of impact is this making? What do the users actually think of this? How do my users in my organization compare with other organizations, right? And you can really see how you guys are doing as an organization with a lot of this feedback that's just baked into Microsoft 365 and Copilot. And then I think along the way, you take a look and say, well, this is really cool for us for as individuals, maybe us as our close-knit team. But what about the overall business? What about business processes? What about some of those cross-functional groups, line of business opportunities? It's like, let's take a look at some of those things. How could we do custom co-pilots, right? And really get in there and design some other things, some plugins, maybe some plugins into Teams, and really get in and do some of those kinds of things. So I think this is just this continual kind of journey where you start small, continue to march it forward in a very purposeful fashion. And when you do that, you won't have these questions about, gosh, I gave licenses to 20 people and nobody's using it, right? Because you're being very purposeful, you're being very strategic. And this is something that doesn't take a huge effort, right? I mean, Microsoft's got a ton of support information. I think one of the things you can do internally as well is build a champions community. I know a lot of our clients already have Microsoft 365 groups within their organization. Hey, what things can we do to leverage Microsoft 365 that we're not doing now? And those groups might meet quarterly, right? Or every other month. Take a look at new ideas, take a look at how should we prioritize these ideas? How do we move some of these forward? I think if you've got a group like that, Copilot sits right on top of that. If you don't, maybe it's time to get going with that, right? Take a look at that, not only for Copilot, but just Microsoft 365 in general, and be purposeful about how you move this forward. You know, this is kind of a fixed cost for you, but it's kind of an unlimited opportunity, right, to get revenue back again. And that's all on you. That's the opportunity that you have in front of you. And you can really do this across the entire organization. And so I think if you set down some of these strategies and take some of these approaches, then you can look across the organization and say, how can we do better with this? What's next, right? And really try to maximize the opportunity, get the low-hanging fruit, really move it forward into success. So that's the presentation
Awesome.
on Copilot. So
Bruce,
I'll
you
turn it
did
back
it.
to you, Jan. I
I was
know
shocked that he could get through all those slides in a short amount
Jan,
of time.
Jan was not a believer.
I was not a believer. That was exceptional. I'm sure there's a lot of people with questions. So feel free to start entering questions in the chat, or when we get to Q&A time, you can unmute yourself and ask Bruce. There was one question that came through from Donica, so go ahead and read that one. And I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up here. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So just a reminder, or I can't remember if that's okay. Just a reminder, because sometimes people will stumble upon our YouTube videos and be like, who is this company? What do they do? So we help companies leverage 365. Depending on where you are in your maturity, you have a different need. Some companies, again, kind of have their data on the network drive still, or they're on Google. And so we'll come in and really, peek under the hood, assess the situation, migrate, get that really important foundation set up first with Teams and SharePoint. And then we move into optimize phase. Optimize phase might be exactly like building out a strategy around how to leverage Copilot. So we get brought in to do like retainer-based models or projects, but something like coming in and helping you establish, how you're going to attack Copilot, just like Bruce explained, would be a typical optimization project we would do for clients. And then our intention is really to wrap up. We don't want our clients to be dependent on us. Our goal is really to train people to be able to be self-sufficient and know everything. So that's our business model. I think part of our secret sauce, go ahead, Bruce, you can go next one, is a little bit on how we approach it. It's really use the 365 suite. Bruce, go ahead and yeah, awesome. Thank you. We always talk about the importance of creating what we call rules of engagement, or your operations manual on how you're going to use 365, good or bad. There's 100 different ways to do everything in Microsoft. So it's coming up with exactly how your company is going to use it, and then training everybody to that effort. And also the way we approach training, sometimes unique and different. We always, in a retainer model in particular, will always offer one-on-one training, not just group training. And that often will help people get over the hump of adoption, help your power users go deep. So lots of different strategies there to help companies fully adopt 365. So the next webinar, I'll enter into chat again the links because some folks came in a little late. Hi, Ben. I saw you popped in there. There's some links in the chat if you want to register for the January webinar, please do that. And then there's other links in there as well. And I think we'll open it up for Q&A. Oh, Joyce has a question in here too. So let's go ahead and go with Donica's question. Bruce, I don't know if you read her question, if you want to repeat it.
Yeah, I did. So the question was Copilot recommending a style as a particular worker for emails and communications, or does everybody kind of sound the same? Here again, Copilot is laying on top of the semantic index and on top of graph, accessing all of your data. And when you do things, it knows all of the things that you do. It has access to all of your emails. It looks at how you phrase things in your emails.
Can we
And
just say creepy? Because it is a little creepy. I gotta
it
be honest.
is.
And it's
And
powerful. A
it's
little creepy.
creepy in an awesome way, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And once again, it's doing this to try to help you as much as it can, right?
Mhm.
If it gives you something and you read it and you're like, God, that's exactly how I would phrase it, right? Then you have very little work to do, right? If it's giving you something that's kind of canned and doesn't really sound at all like you, well, now you've got to go through and wordsmith it, right?
Mhm.
And is that a big deal on a one-off thing? No. Over the course of all the work that you do, yeah, it's huge, right?
Mhm.
If I save a little bit of time here, save a little bit of time there, after a while, it all adds up, right? So yes, it does all of this stuff in the context of which you are working. So
And Bruce, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you can really prompt it as well. So you can say, make me sound funny, make me sound super intelligent. You can
yep,
really prompt it to guide and give it context to how you
yep,
want something written.
absolutely, yep. And along that same line, I think one of the things to kind of think about with Copilot, and this is just true of AI in general, is the fact that prompts are a big deal, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we kind of we've got this new tool, right? And we're learning it and we're like, oh man, right? We kind of don't think about the fact that it wasn't all that long ago we were doing this very same thing with search, right?
Mm.
We would type in a search request and it would come back with a search result that wasn't as great as we expected, right? And so then what do we do? It's like, well, I think I'll rephrase the question, right?
Mhm.
And now we just totally take that for granted because we've kind of trained ourselves and the tools have gotten more sophisticated and now we just know how to do that, right?
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
with Copilot and AI in general, we're in the new kind of the new realm of all of this. And so it'll take us a little while to kind of get in that groove, right? And I know I find myself doing that. I mentioned I love putting together PowerPoint slide decks with Copilot. And I do it all the time. And one day, a while ago, I went to create a slide deck on a particular topic of Microsoft technology, and it came back and said, I don't think I have anything for you." I'm like, "What?" Of course you do, right? And then I looked at the way that I worded the question. It's like, oh, that was pretty stupid on my part, right? That was a awful request, right? Poorly worded. And it just kind of illustrated that point, right? It's like, yeah, I'm still kind of learning too, right? How to ask these questions, how to create good prompts so that it gives me what I want from a result perspective. So Jan, back to your question, absolutely. That's one of the awesome things about it too, is when you make that request, you can actually add all those other things and it knows what those things are and what they mean. And it'll craft that email in that example with maybe a bit of humor, right? Because that's what you wanted to do. So yeah, good.
Awesome. Good job, Bruce. All right, next question. Joyce is asking, can you give more examples of what a company would when a company would create custom co-pilots for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One that's super, super simple. We were doing some work with an organization and just helping them with Microsoft 365, getting that rolling. And they kept asking some questions, and we said, Microsoft's got this great resource repository called the Microsoft 365 Training Center, and you should be using that. And then it's like, wait a second, why don't we just create a prompt, put it in Teams so everybody can just use it, right? So now if you got a question, you can just go into Teams, ask the question, and it'll go look at that repository, that specific repository, and give you back some answers related to your Microsoft 365 question. That's a pretty basic one, right? A pretty easy one. It's now I could obviously go out to that location, but here it is right inside of apps that I already use, and it will give me not looking at the whole entire internet and too much stuff. It'll instead just go to Microsoft's repository of knowledge, right? And give me an answer based on that. So that's one. Another one that we're working on right now is a group of engineers, and there's several of them. They go out into the field, they do all these surveys, they do all these questionnaires, they come back with all this information, and then they have to sit down and put all of that into a proposal. And it's usually a lengthy proposal. So the custom Copilot we're working on right now is to have Copilot look at all the information that they collected, and then go look at the repository of all of the proposals they've created, and then to create a draft of a proposal, right? And so it's going to look at the information that was collected, say, hey, which one of these proposals is kind of like that? I'll use that as an example, right? As kind of a draft. I'll drop all this information into that proposal, and that'll give the users a big head start in creating this proposal, right? Now, they still have to go through, check it, tweak it up, but it's going to save them a ton of time because they do a lot of these things and they're big documents that take time to produce. So that's just a couple of quick examples. I think there's lots and lots of different examples. And I think that's one of the things about a rollout is when you get users, especially in the early days, kind of a select user group that start to use this, then all of a sudden one day the light bulb goes off and they're like, hey, what if we could use this for XYZ, right? And you need to capture that idea, right? Even if you have no plans to do that right now, you need to start capturing those ideas because those are the things where you start to take it to the next level, right? And you'll probably come up with a whole list of those. And then you need to look at that list and say, yeah, let's get going. Let's try to do a custom Copilot. Which one should we do first here, right? Which one is something that we can actually accomplish? Which one do we have technical expertise or we could get that expertise? You know, who would buy off on this and really adopt this? Kind of look at some of those things and say, yeah, let's do this one first, right? And get some experience with it and then continue to kind of move on down the road. And I'll guarantee you, after you get people using this, you won't be lacking in ideas, but you will have too many ideas. And so you need to come up with a way to kind of screen through those and move towards the ideas that give you a big return, right?
Perfect. Bruce, there's another question. Stuart, I'm going to state what you wrote, but feel free to unmute if I don't get it. So he's saying, can you create different projects in Copilot and sandbag to protect client privacy? Claude AI provides projects which allow you to train the AI to specific language and style, but not shared publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. So custom Copilots can be internal only. They can be external to clients, customers, whomever. They could be combinations. You can limit the Copilot to the kind of information that you want to use. You can limit Copilot to the kind of information that you want to be a training repository. You can also limit Copilot to the kind of information that you want it to return, right? And so you can definitely put lots and lots of different parameters in place to address all of those things. And that's, once again, huge from a security standpoint and also just from kind of being as focused as you possibly can on the solution at hand. So, by the way, I mentioned Copilot Studio a lot. And I touched very briefly on the fact that Azure AI is also available for kind of that next step. And there's kind of no limit to what you can do when you start to get into Azure AI and doing Copilots there. because you have kind of free reign when you get there. Once again, Microsoft has lots and lots of different models available. So when you create your own kind of bespoke solution, you can use one or more models that maybe you say, I don't want to use ChatGPT, I want to use this other model instead. And you can decide what models you're going to use. And that also helps to kind of really tailor that to a specific need. So.
Perfect. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to unmute and ask or enter into chat. We'll just give a couple minutes for that. Bruce, this was excellent. So excellent. I always learn from all of you. This is such an exciting time in our lives for sure. A little scary with the creepiness side, but it's huge. It's awesome. I don't see any other chat or questions coming in. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up then. So thanks everybody for being here. You will, if you're registered, you'll get a copy of the recording. Feel free to share it with anybody and everybody. We'd love to spread the word. And please reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to help you. So thanks again.
My name is Caitlin. Can
I
actually
Caitlin, I love it. Right under the wire. That was perfect.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Of where do you locate the Copilot in 365?
Yeah, so Copilot for 365, if you go to any one of the apps, and I say that without exaggeration, if you have a Copilot for Microsoft 365 license and you open up PowerPoint, for example, up on the top ribbon off to the right-hand side, there's a Copilot icon. And if you click on that, it opens up a window pane on the right-hand side, just to the right of the slide. And you can type in your request. You can say, create 6 slides on this topic, right? And you can just type that in and it'll create those slides for you. And the ditto with Word, ditto with Teams, right? Every single product in 365, if you've got a license for Copilot for Microsoft 365, every single product has a Copilot icon there. And you can click that open and bring Copilot to bear on what you're trying to accomplish.
So if we're not seeing it, that means we don't have a license?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And then if you do using Copilot Studio and create custom Copilots, those you get to decide where that's going to get consumed, right? So you could literally have that inside of one of the apps, but you could also have it be a window in SharePoint, or a tab that shows up in Teams, or a standalone app that you went to. You get to have all kinds of options there depending on how users would need to use it, right? So you get a lot of flexibility on that side as far as the use of it. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for being on the call. We'll see you in January for the next webinar. Have a wonderful holiday and go vote if you haven't already. So thanks.